The saga of Jonathan Kuminga continues to dominate headlines in the Golden State Warriors offseason. And yet here we are still waiting for that one defining update. Will he stay in Golden State, or will his journey lead him elsewhere? Today's video brings you the biggest development we've seen yet regarding his next move. We'll also dive into the surprising news about Damian Lillard, yes, the big name, on the free agent radar after being waived by Milwaukee, so stay tuned. But first, if you're all about Warriors coverage, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, because whenever something significant happens with Kuminga or the rest of the Dubs, you'll be the first to hear about it. And hey, we're decently close to hitting 97,000 subscribers, just a couple hundred hardcore fans away from that next milestone, so if you haven't already, go punch that red button and lock in your spot. Alright, onto the meat of it, the Kuminga situation. Back at the start of free agency, Brett Siegel from Clutch Points dropped the first hint that the Miami Heat and Chicago Bulls were keeping an eye on him. But the real plot twist came when the Athletic's Sam Amick surfaced with word that the Sacramento Kings had quietly joined the fray, positioning themselves as a dark horse contender, possibly even bumping the Brooklyn Nets out of the discussion. While Amick's initial reporting suggested Sacramento was unlikely to make the leap, a few more whispers surfaced in the days following, indicating that the Kings could in fact be working on a deal behind the scenes involving a sign-in trade. The storyline picked up further with Mark Stein's update via the Steinline Substack, asserting that Sacramento might include Malik Monk in any proposed trade package. Now that's where things get interesting, because as far as skill set goes, Monk is the far more complete player compared to Jonathan Kuminga. Let's be real, Monk is a proven three-point shooter with range, a reliable creator, and the kind of insta-offense guy Golden State would absolutely covet. Kuminga, by contrast, is still raw. He's not a go-to shooter, his decision-making needs polish. He's not the most astute passer, and despite flashes of effort, he hasn't locked down consistency. Across the board, he's still working out the kinks as a rebounder and defender at the NBA level. It's why a Monk for Kuminga switch-up would ring with logic for a Dubs front office, aiming to maximize Stevens, Thompson, and Green's championship window. That said, the wrinkle in Sacramento's interest is salary matching. Monk is set to earn just under $19 million next season, while projections for Kuminga's deal hover near $23 million, to begin potentially spiking to $25 million on average. Matching those figures would most likely require the Warriors to add an extra piece to balance everything, and Buddy Hield is the obvious candidate. He's beloved in the locker room, tight with Steph Draymond and Gary Payton, but he doesn't have the creative upside Monk brings. That said, his shooting still matters, and his veteran presence is a non-negligible factor. To make the trade viable, Kuminga would need to sign a contract around $23 million a year, one set up as perhaps a 3-year $75 million deal overall. That package, with Monk and Hield heading to Golden State, would give the team a better shooter, better shot creator, and maintain a veteran locker room glue. Now, what about the other potential suitors? Well, Miami and Chicago have also been mentioned as realistic options. When the offseason tipped off, Anthony Slater reported that both the Heat and Bulls were poised to make a sign-in trade move for Kuminga. Chicago has added some wings of their own, Noah Vonleh, yes, a project wing, and Isaac Okoro. And while they might have cap space to make something happen, there hasn't been any strong indication they're seriously dialing Humboldt Field basket in hand. Pressing Warriors will take Kuminga. Over in Miami, they definitely have the flexibility, but the asking price is murky. It's unclear whether the Heat would pony up a package that matches, say, what Sacramento could offer. Plus, the matchup between Kuminga's potential role and Miami's rotation depth raises questions. Coming down to Nola, New Orleans lacks the financial ammo, and although someone like Herbert Jones would be a fascinating return, it seems like a stretch both on budget and asset value fronts. That leaves us with Sacramento and Miami as frontrunners, with Chicago drifting further off the radar. Personally, I'm leaning into that Sacramento story. The pieces make sense. Monk fits stylistically, salary can be matched with a Hield add-in, and Kuminga gets a chance to spread his wings in a more prominent role. Plus, it's probably the cleanest one-tune swap. And when you roll in the salary add, Golden State still preserves flexibility, mid-level exceptions, trade exceptions. Maybe they sneak in another vet team or biannual exception level. You can start eyeing someone like Al Horford, who you might target at a $10 million range. Maybe the Warriors don't land him, but they still have the space to roll with someone in that tier. They also maintain their trade exception to point to $1 million worth plus second-round picks plus vetmen, or to for rotational depth. Chunking Buddy Hield is bittersweet, but if you're getting Malik Monk in return, it's a trade-off. That makes basketball sense. Of course, none of this can move forward until Kuminga's future is sorted. You can't bring in Damian Lillard or not until this domino falls. And speaking of Dame, we'll transition there in a moment. But before we circle back, know this: Golden State needs to get moving now. Free agency is shifting fast. If they sit on their hands too long, the options dwindle and suddenly you're scrounging for mid-level scraps instead of strong rotational contributors. Now let's talk about Damian Lillard. Yeah, Dame time might actually be ticking in the Bay Area crazy right after being waived and stretched by the Milwaukee Bucks. Dame is officially a free agent, and the buzz around the league is already hitting fever pitch. Reports say contending teams wasted no time in calling his camp. And guess which names popped up right away? Golden State, Boston, and the Lakers. Not surprising at all, especially when you consider what Lillard still represents, even if he's not expected to play much, if at all, this coming season. It's wild to see a player recovering from a torn Achilles still generating this kind of buzz, but this is Damian Lillard we're talking about. His reputation around the league is elite, his leadership is unquestioned, and he's still seen as a player who can swing the tide for any franchise that gives him a shot, even if that shot's delayed. Now let's keep it real. Lillard is 34 years old. He's not going to be rushing back to the court. In fact, the likelihood of him playing at all this coming season is slim. Maybe there's a miracle comeback after the All-Star break, but even that feels like a long shot. So why are teams scrambling to get him under contract now? Simple: he's getting paid $22.5 million by Milwaukee over the next 5 years thanks to the stretch provision. That's security. That gives him leverage. It gives him freedom. That means he doesn't need a big payday from anyone else right now. He can take a short-term, low-cost deal with a contender and focus purely on his rehab and return. And if we're being honest, the Warriors are probably the best fit for a comeback story. Lillard is an Oakland guy, born and raised in the Bay. Signing with Golden State would mean staying close to home, training in a familiar environment, and surrounding himself with a franchise that understands how to handle veteran stars with long injury timelines. I mean, this is the same organization that managed Klay Thompson's return with patience and precision, the same staff that gave Steph the time he needed during his injuries. Golden State's medical team, led by Rick Celebrini, is one of the most respected in the NBA. If there's a place where Lillard can take his time, recover fully, and come back ready to contribute, it's Golden State. Now let's say he does sign with the Warriors. What would that look like? Most likely a vet minimum deal. Maybe something like a 1-year, 2-year structure where the first year is guaranteed and the second is a player or team option. That would allow Dame to focus on recovery without the pressure of proving himself right away. And if he does get healthy, boom, you've got a playoff-tested, big shot hitting ladder game killer ready to slide into your rotation right in time for a postseason push. Imagine Steph, Klay, and Dame sharing a floor, 3 of the coldest shooters in league history in one backcourt. That's nightmare fuel for opposing defenses. Even if Dame's role is limited next season, the upside in year 2 is what teams are banking on. Golden State could be the ideal soft landing spot. But again, this is all dependent on what happens with Jonathan Kuminga. That's the logjam right now. No major moves, no Dame signing, no reshuffling of the cap space until Kuminga's future is resolved. That's the bottleneck. Golden State's front office knows this. Mike Dunleavy Jr. knows this. They need that piece to fall into place, and they need it to happen soon. Free agency is drying up. The best options are flying off the board. Every day that passes without clarity on the Kuminga situation is a day lost in terms of building out this roster. So yeah, it's a waiting game, but it's a high-stakes one. Let's circle back to the salary mechanics for a second. If the Warriors do make a move involving Malik Monk and Buddy Hield, they open up some financial flexibility, not a ton, but just enough to play with the mid-level and biannual exceptions. That could net them a couple of solid vets, especially with teams trying to shed salary or make room for rookie extensions. Maybe someone like Georgia's Niang becomes available. Maybe a wing shooter. Maybe a stretch 4. There are possibilities out there, but only if the Warriors act fast. Delay too long and the options dry up to the point where you're scraping the bottom of the bargain bin. Now, even with Lillard sidelined, think about what he brings to the locker room: the presence, the leadership, the voice. You plug him into that Warriors culture, and suddenly your young guys, Pajim, Ski, TJD, even Moses Moody, get a front row seat to one of the most respected pros in the league. And that matters. That absolutely matters in a locker room that's trying to pivot from its dynasty past to a new era of Dubs basketball. Lillard fits right into that transition. He won't be a threat to Steph's leadership. He won't overshadow the veterans, and he definitely won't be a distraction. If anything, he amplifies everything they already have. And what if, just imagine, he does beat the recovery timeline? What if he's available by March, starts ramping up, and comes into the playoffs healthy and hungry? That's the kind of wild card every contender dreams about. You add that level of firepower in the postseason, and suddenly the Warriors go from fringe playoff hopeful to legit title threat. Is it a gamble? Sure. But at the vet minimum, it's the kind of risk you take every time, and considering he's already getting paid by the Bucks, it's a win-win scenario for both sides. Dame gets the environment he needs, and Golden State gets a potential ace in their back pocket. Now there's always the chance Dame waits. Maybe he doesn't want to sign anywhere right now. Maybe he focuses solely on rehab and keeps his options open for the 2026 season. That's still on the table. But if he's leaning toward joining a team this year, Golden State has to be near the top of the list. The fit is just a clean. The city, the staff, the structure, it's all there. What they need now is clarity on Kuminga. Once that's done, the chessboard opens up. Trade, signings, exceptions, maybe even another move we're not seeing yet. But it all starts with Jonathan Kuminga. He is the first domino, so let's see what happens. Will the Warriors go all in on Malik Monk? Will Buddy Hield be part of the exit strategy? Can they pull off a sign-in trade that gives them the firepower they need, while still keeping cap room for someone like Dame? And will Lillard actually choose the Bay over other contenders like Boston or LA? These are the questions we're staring down, and they could be answered in the coming days. The clock is ticking and every moment counts. But if there's one thing we've learned over the past decade of Warriors basketball, it's this: never count out this front office. They've pulled off some stunners before, and they might just have one more trick up their sleeve. So let me know what you think. Should Golden State pull the trigger on the Malik Monk deal? Would you sign Dame even if he misses the entire season? Is Kuminga still part of this team's long-term vision, or is it time to move on? Drop your thoughts below, and as always, keep it locked right here for the latest on the Warriors off-season roller coaster. And while we're all sitting here waiting for the Kuminga decision to set things in motion, it's worth taking a deeper look at what this all really means for the direction of the Warriors franchise, because let's face it, this offseason is not just about tweaking a few things, it's about defining the future of this team. The dynasty is not dead, but it's evolving, and this summer might be the clearest turning point we've seen in years. Everything from roster construction to financial management is under the microscope. The margin for error is razor thin, and with every rumor, every potential move, we get a clearer picture of whether Golden State is trying to reload or rebuild quietly around the edges. Let's take a second and think about Jonathan Kuminga's actual fit within this system. Yes, he has potential. Yes, he's athletic. But how much longer can the Warriors afford to wait for him to become the player they hoped for when they drafted him? Golden State's system is built on movement, passing awareness, and high basketball IQ, and right now Kuminga doesn't check enough of those boxes. His athleticism is undeniable. His ability to slash to the rim, to explode in transition, that's real. But he's a poor outside shooter, doesn't create effectively for others, and struggles with decision-making when the ball isn't in his hands. In other systems with more freedom and less structure, he might flourish. But in Golden State, he's a round peg trying to fit into a square hole. That's why this potential trade with Sacramento makes so much sense. Malik Monk is the opposite. He's not a perfect player by any means, but he brings something Golden State desperately needs: shot creation, an offensive punch off the bench. He averaged over 17 points per game last season. That's not nothing. He's also played some backup point guard minutes and handled them surprisingly well. His decision-making has improved. He's got range, and he's not afraid of the moment. Sure, his defense leaves a lot to be desired, but this is the NBA in 2025. Everyone's looking for spacing, speed, and scoring. Monk gives you that, and he does it with confidence. Now throw Buddy Hield into that package, and suddenly you're adding another elite shooter to surround Steph and Clay. Hield may not be the all-around player Monk is, but his gravity on the floor changes how defenses play. You can't leave him alone. You have to respect his range. And that opens up the floor for everyone else. Even if you only get 20 to 25 minutes a night from him, that's 25 minutes of spacing, ball movement, and shooting threat. That fits like a glove in Kerr's system. So yes, losing Kuminga would sting, especially if he goes on to become a star elsewhere. But you're not trading him for future picks or projects. You're trading him for pieces that help you win now. In Steph Curry's prime, that's the calculation, and it's the right one. So where does Dame Lillard fit into all of this? He's the wild card. He's not the centerpiece of the offseason plan, but he might be the biggest swing. If the Warriors can pull it off, imagine the optics: Steph and Dame, two of the most beloved guards in modern NBA history, finally sharing the same backcourt, even if just in spirit for now. That's not just a great story, it's a savvy basketball move if Dame returns healthy. And Golden State knows how to take care of its veterans. Dame could sit out the entire season, focus purely on rehab, and still contribute to the locker room and team culture. Then next year, when he's ready to return, you've already got him integrated into the system. No onboarding, no learning curve, just Dame doing Dame things. But let's be clear, this is not a guarantee. He might still sign with another team. Boston could come in with a strong pitch. The Lakers are always lurking. There's no shortage of interest. But if Dame values stability, legacy, and familiarity, then Golden State should have the edge. They're not just offering a roster spot, they're offering a home. They're offering the chance to finish your career in the Bay, where it all started for you. And that means something even in today's player movement era. Now, beyond Monk, beyond Hield, beyond Dame, there's another layer to all this roster: flexibility and how it plays into the Warriors' long-term cap strategy. They're dancing on a razor's edge when it comes to the second apron. Every dollar matters. Every exception counts. That's why the non-taxpayer mid-level and biennial exceptions are so valuable this summer. You use the mid-level wisely, you can bring in a difference maker. Use the biennial correctly and you might land a key rotation piece. But misfire and suddenly your depth dries up, your bench gets exposed, and you're staring down another early playoff exit. It's a tightrope walk and there's no room for mistakes. So here's what I'd be watching closely over the next few days. Number 1. How quickly do the Warriors move on the Kuminga situation? If they drag it out too long, it complicates everything else. Number 2. What kind of package are they really considering from Sacramento? Is Monk enough? Does Hield need to be included? Is there a third team in the mix to make the salaries work? And number 3. Does Dame commit somewhere soon, or does he play the waiting game through the summer? That decision could tip the balance of power in the West, depending on where he lands. And even outside of those big moves, there are other questions. What happens with Kevin Looney? He's been a steady presence in the front court for years. But with the way center money has inflated this offseason, Brook Lopez getting $9 million, guys like Al Horford still commanding 8 to 10, it's fair to wonder if Looney might become a casualty of the cap. Not because he isn't valuable, but because the team needs to reallocate money to perimeter scoring. Could he be moved? Could he be stretched? Could he renegotiate? Those are all things on the table right now. And what about the younger guys? Trace Jackson Davis, Brandon Pajimski, Moses Moody. How do they fit into this new-look rotation if the Warriors load up on veterans? You don't want to stunt their development, but you also don't want to lean too heavily on inexperience when you're chasing a championship. Steve Kerr has always tried to walk that balance, but this season might be the toughest test yet. Managing minutes, managing egos, managing expectations, it's going to be a full-time job. But that's the reality of where the Warriors are right now. They're not rebuilding. They're not tanking. They're trying to squeeze one more title run out of the greatest core this franchise has ever seen. And if that means making tough decisions on young talent, if it means gambling on health, if it means signing a 3-year-old point guard with an Achilles tear, you do it. Because the window is closing, not shut, not locked, but definitely closing.